All right, now as I'm sure you all know by now, Zhang Weili was defending her UFC strawweight women's championship against Joanna Jedrzejczyk in what was a treat of a fight, to put it mildly. If you haven't seen it already, I highly suggest you go do yourself a favor and watch it, as it was very entertaining. Now, Zhang Weili won a very close split decision, and some people feel like Joanna would have won. Some people feel like it's very split amongst the community. And as you know, I like to watch fights like that and give my own round by round analysis and determine whether I feel like the judges got it wrong or got it right. All right, so let's get started. Round one, it was a feeling out process within I would say the first minute. They were mostly just exchanging leg kicks and doing a good job of exchanging leg kicks. The piece was broken at about the minute and a half mark when Joanna landed a very powerful right that shook Zhang Weili. Now, both of them had really excellent, very sharp kickboxing and great footwork. They were both moving around. They seemed to be taking turns who was going to be the inside fighter and who was going to be fighting on the outside. It was mostly, I would say, Zhang Weili fighting on the outside, but they were really going back and forth with that, which surprised me. It was an extremely close round. I gave round one to Joanna only because I felt she had slightly better countering. This was a round that could have gone, if you gave it to Zhang Weili, I don't blame you. This was a round that really could have gone either way. Now, round two, again, great stand-up by both, and Zhang Weili was landing slightly more powerful shots. Now, at some point, she actually attempted a takedown, and Joanna was able to counter by getting her in, it's called like a clinch, a double underhook clinch. And she was able to press her against the cage. Joanna was winning a very important clinch battle against the cage. And although Zhang Weili landed a couple of good elbows and punches on the way out from breaking that clinch, which good on her. Even though she lost the clinch battle, she still did damage. And at the end, Zhang Weili landed this beautiful right and an excellent follow-up. Zhang Weili may have stolen that second round in those last 30 seconds. So I gave Zhang Weili round number two. Now, in round number three, I actually have right here, the very first sentence, wow, what a fight, constant back and forth. This is the beginning of the third round in a 5-round fight. And already I'm like, wow, this is one of the best fights I've ever seen. Now, Joanna did something very interesting. She switched up her stance into a southpaw stance, or left-handed stance, as some people know it. And that actually helped her out quite a lot. And now, Zhang Weili was having trouble figuring out the timing of Joanna's punches as a result. Zhang Weili was the much smaller fighter, so she was already going to have those problems. Being smaller, Joanna can use her height and her reach. But after she switched up her stance, Zhang Weili was having trouble figuring out Joanna's punches. Joanna did an excellent job from kickboxing in a switch stance. Now, there was a good scramble by Zhang Weili, but the problem was she may have been more tired after that scramble as a result. And in the last 30 seconds, kind of like what Zhang Weili did in the previous round, Joanna turned it to 100 in the last 30 seconds. And just as I feel Zhang Weili stole round number two, Joanna may have stolen round number three. Just because of those last 30 seconds. They're very important. Now, round four. Even though Joanna was looking fresher, Zhang Weili was catching a second wind. And now, Joanna was landing solid hooks and elbows, but Zhang Weili was doing an excellent job of countering them. And neither one of these girls were missing shots. They were all landing flush. And Joanna, at some point in round number four, got swollen. You probably saw pictures of it already, of how badly swollen her forehead was. That happened in round four. So, again, round four, extremely, extremely close. I gave it to Zhang Weili. I felt she did a lot more. You look at Joanna's face. I mean, that didn't happen by accident. I mean, Zhang Weili had to have landed solid to make her swell that bad. So I gave Zhang Weili round number 4. Now, round number 5, it's funny. Even the commentators had no idea who was winning at this point. Joe Rogan and I believe Dominic Cruz was one of the other ones. They're like, who do you think's winning this fight? I don't know, man. I'm glad I'm not a judge. That's literally what they were saying. It was a funny little exchange. Now, to start round 5, both of these girls looked just as crisp and fresh as they did in round 1. It was amazing. I was more than impressed. Now, at some point in the middle of round 5, Joanna, I don't remember what the strike was, but Joanna may have gotten her nose broken at some point in the middle of round 5. Now, again, when you get your nose broken, that's, it affects you got to breathe through your mouth now, and that really tires you out a lot more. Luckily for Joanna, if that did happen, it happened in round 5 when the fight was already over. If it happened earlier on, she would have been in serious trouble. But despite that, again, like I mentioned earlier, both these girls were just as fresh in round 5 as they were in round 1. Neither were missing. Joanna was landing just as much damage as Zhang Weili, it seems. This was one of the closest rounds I have ever seen. Round number 5 of Joanna Jedrzejczyk and Zhang Weili. I have it right here. This is the greatest fight in women's history. Hands down. It may be it's one of the greatest fights, period, even if you include the men's. I could not give round number 5 to anybody. I scored round 5. I almost never do this, but I scored round 5 as a draw. So, as a result, 2 rounds for Zhang Weili, 2 rounds for Joanna. I scored that fight a draw. This was, I don't care what anybody says, regardless of who you think should have won, this was not a robbery. This was one of the closest fights ever. It's fights like that make me thankful that I'm not a judge, because fights like that, there's no way you can score them perfectly. It was every single round, except for maybe round 2 when Zhang Weili won round 2. Every single round it could have gone either way. So how do you score something like that? You really got to feel for judges. I crap on judges a lot, but you know what? Their job can be hard, especially with fights like that. And furthermore, I mean, thank you so much, Joanna and Zhang Weili, for that. It's fights like that are the reason why I love the sport of MMA to begin with, why I hope to go pro in it one day. It's because of fights like that, because even when you lost, you won. You without a doubt won, because everyone's going to be talking about this fight. Everyone's going to remember it for years to come. You probably they're going to forget most of your wins. But even if you lost this one, they're going to remember this one. And that's important. It's good to leave a mark like that. So, as you all know, I scored it 2 for Zhang Weili and 2 for Joanna. Let me know what you guys think about the fight, whether you agree or disagree, and leave your comments down below.